Hey everyone, I'm Monique and I'm excited to welcome you to today's LinkedIn Live session, AI-Driven Healthcare, Transforming Patient Care and Operational Excellence. I'm here on behalf of Pronix Inc. and we're proud to be hosting this conversation. Today, as we know it, the healthcare world is moving fast. There's a ton of pressure on providers and systems to deliver care that's not only faster and smarter, but also more personalized. And at the same time, everyone's trying to keep operations running as efficiently as possible. And that's where AI is stepping in a very big way. Today, we're diving into how AI-driven solutions are shaking up healthcare, from predictive diagnostics and automated workflows to better decision-making and more meaningful patient engagement. We've got some amazing healthcare experts here with us, and we're going to unpack what this shift really looks like on the ground and how organizations are managing innovation while still staying compliant and keeping data secure. Before we bring up these tech experts up in healthcare, if you don't have the chat or comment area opened up, please go ahead and do so now. Just look down below if you're on your phone or to the right-hand side of your screen if you're viewing us on a desktop for an area to leave your comments. This is where we'll be asking you questions and feedback. We want this to be a two-way street where it's truly interactive during the time we spend together during this session. Please feel free to share any ideas or questions that may pop up as we go through this session. In fact, let us know right now where you are joining us from. As you all are sharing that with us, I would like to share a bit about who we are. As mentioned before, I'm Monique, and I'm here on behalf of Pronix Inc. At Pronix Inc., we're all about helping healthcare organizations modernize and move faster with AI-powered solutions that actually make a difference. We work alongside providers and healthcare teams to improve patient care, streamline operations, and support smarter decision-making across the board. Whether it's automating workflows, enhancing engagement, or staying ahead of compliance, we bring the tech and the strategy to help make that happen. Our goal is to help healthcare systems deliver more personalized care, run more efficiently, and confidently scale in today's fast-moving digital world. Now, before we dive into our conversation, I'm excited to introduce the incredible experts joining us for today's conversation. First up, we have Casi. Casi, welcome. Please let us know a bit about yourself.
Hi, Monique. Thank you so much for having me. I am Casi Vician Ischay. My background spans clinical care, large-scale system replacements, and high-volume automation work across payers and health systems, along with leadership in implementation, data analytics, and clinical operations. I'm very glad to contribute to today's discussion. So thank you, Pronix, for having me.
Thank you so much, Casi. Next joining us is Pam. Pam, how are you? Please let us know a bit about yourself. Oh, Pam, you are muted.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm Pam O'Mara. I have been in healthcare for over 2 decades, starting out building back-end solutions to assist in supply chain, moving up to managing IT enterprises, small and large, including back-end systems and clinical systems. Today, I am also proud to say that I've finally got a master's degree in software and strategic innovation in healthcare. Want to thank Monique and my co-panels and also Pronix for inviting me to this very interesting discussion today.
All right, thank you so much, Pam. And then last but not the very least, we have Gary. Hey, Gary, let's hear a little bit about you.
Hello, Monique. It's good to see you. I'm Gary Fingerhut. I'm an EVP with Core. I manage our pre-built agentic industry solutions, where at Core we focus on large enterprises, helping them reimagine enterprise AI. Our goal is to accelerate the speed of business, leveraging AI in our platform across work, process, and service, which we'll talk about in a moment. Myself, over 30 years, of healthcare industry across payer, provider, and the life science industry. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you, Gary, Pam, and Casey for being here. Excited to have you all join us for this conversation. So let's dive in. All right, so the first question is for you, Pam. How is changing the way healthcare organizations deliver patient care?
I think with AI, it enables the providers and anyone patient facing um, faster access to large data, which allows them to do faster diagnosis, personalized treatment plans, which is key for quality patient care, proactive care management, and also by analyzing the medical histories, which we know is not only voluminous, but also disparate. Um, we can get to histories, symptoms, patterns across population. So with AI, the hope is that it helps clinicians deliver more accurate, timely, and very personalized care interventions.
All right, thank you, Pam. Casey or Gary, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, happy to jump in. So I agree with everything that was just said, right? Faster diagnosis, more personalized treatment, proactive management, and I'll add another layer to that, or maybe another spin to that. And that is if we can leverage tools like AI to gather the information or the knowledge and bring it to our caregivers, then perhaps that enables our caregivers to bring the wisdom and to the table, to the patient. There's a gentleman, doctor, physician named Dr. Anthony Chang, who recently brought this up at a conference, AI Med. And I really believe in what he said, in that it's about time that we bring the information together efficiently, fast, to everything that Pam just said. But we know that AI is not going to replace the wisdom that a physician can bring to the table, right? And maybe that is not a never, but certainly not in my lifetime. So I think that's where we could focus, and there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yes, most definitely. And thank you for sharing that. Casey, what impact can AI have on improving operational excellence in healthcare?
Hmm. Thank you. What a great question. So when I think about operational excellence, I always go back to my roots as a clinician. I spent years watching talented clinicians lose large parts of their day to tasks that had nothing to do with caring for people. And that really shaped my entire career. My personal goal has always been the same: reduce the administrative load, improve ROI for the organization, and return time to the bedside and the field so clinicians can do exactly what they're trained for, serve the patients. So with that in mind, I could share how I've seen AI influence daily operations recently. First and foremost are those routine administrative tasks that sit between clinicians and the patient care. Healthcare is full of steps that follow the same pattern, whether you're in a clinic, you're in a health system, or a payer setting. Think about scheduling checks, verifying registration details, routing referrals, reviewing authorizations, pulling the right chart sections before a visit, drafting the first version of that note. I could go on and on and on. But in my experience, these tasks drain hours necessarily. They may not even need the clinical judgment. So when AI is handling the first pass, that workflow becomes steadier and clinicians stop carrying the weight of the work that maybe never should have been theirs in the first place. That shift alone could improve staff satisfaction and give organizations measurable return. To me, this is a really fun time to be in healthcare informatics. I just love everything happening. And second, what comes to mind is a clearer sense of capacity across the operation. So I've seen that most of the delays in the healthcare happen because leaders can't see issues forming until they're already too large. Backlogs in intake, scheduling, authorizations, even billing grow quietly in the background. So by the time someone notices, the recovery work can be really expensive. So I see that automation can scan the entire workload and flag pressure points early. And another thing I've seen is that this allows the team to reassign tasks sooner, support clinics before they fall behind, and what we all love, reduce the wait times for the patients. So this is all ways of protecting the overall care experience and keeping the operational pieces predictable.
Yeah,
Pam,
Thank
what are
couldn't
you
your
for
agree
such a
more.
Yep.
thoughts?
thorough answer. Yeah, and I was actually going to turn it over to you, Gary,
I
because
would just
of the
say
work that you do.
I couldn't agree more, Carrie.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Cassie. Bottleneck prediction is so vital in healthcare. Getting ahead of the bottlenecks, like you referred to, around processes before your rev cycle's a mess, and before all the things that you said. And I think early on at Core, we saw a lot of the what we refer to as the low-hanging fruit, right? And not it's still plenty of opportunity here, but around patient access, around appointment management, the high volume things that clearly automation can handle today. But now we're really moving into these processes we call AI for process, where these are agentic workflows that occur in the background, headless, right? They're accomplishing the tasks that you're referring to without any human in the loop early on, right? Early on, doing the things that just make the process much more effective. And they just run 24/7 and free our caregivers up to do the things that are more important, like we talked about earlier, right? Bringing wisdom and making decisions. So, yeah.
I'd like
Sure,
to add to that. And
sure, Pam.
the fact that in the operation and workflow, right, there's this misconception about AI, especially in the front desk and the back office. And there's until we clear that misconception or that image that AI brings about replacing humans, there's always going to be this this tug of war. And I think first and foremost, it's not only just professionals, right? It's down to the lowest layer of jobs. So until we get the humans to understand that AI is just part of the evolution of technology that brings a lot more streamline and really easier processes. Who wants to do the same stuff over and over,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
this is where AI comes in and can really help healthcare. So that's kind of my takeaway on this question.
Yeah, most definitely, Pam, because I was actually about to say the same thing. Like, there is this major fear about AI taking over and replacing humans. There still needs to be overview, right? Or review as to what's going on. Or, like you mentioned, Gary, with having it agentic, you still need to look over as to what's going on of your workflow, your process, your automation. So, if anything, it's all about streamlining and efficacy. But, there's still humans that still need to be there to make sure things are working well, just in case if anything breaks or there's a mishap anywhere. So I'm glad that we're all in alignment in that regard.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
Um,
get
I think there's a lot of room on the scale here, right? So if we're talking about answering the phone and scheduling appointments or asking frequently asked questions or asking where the parking, like there are, tens of millions of phone calls that we answer now, leveraging these capabilities that enable, because there's no shortage of people doing these things, right? But there is a shortage of people delivering care. So if we
correct.
can free up the folks that are doing these things and allow them to focus on more high value, more cases that require a human, right? More empathy than we can bring today, or more diagnoses capabilities, right? Then you can replace those people. You're not replacing them, you're moving them up the chain. Again,
Exactly.
you're leveraging the tool to bring information and letting them bring the knowledge.
Yeah. Ultimately, you're empowering them, like you said, moving up the
Sure.
chain. So, Pam, I think you were about to say something as well.
well, I was just going to refer to one of Gary's documentation or postings at LinkedIn. He said the key to AI is, quote, building the brain. And everybody has to keep that in mind. AI is built by a human. And, in order to cultivate that human, you got to teach it. And the teacher is still human. So again, kudos, Gary, because I like that. Building the brain.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, moving on to our next question, and this is to you, Casey, and you've given us a little summary of your background, so I'm sure you're going to love answering this question as well. But how does predictive analytics support better clinical and operational decisions?
I do, Monique. You nailed it on the head. I'm such a data geek, self-proclaimed. You can call me a geek, it's fine. But then, also again, as a former clinician, I've always believed that the earlier we see a problem, the better chance we have to change the outcome. And that applies to clinical care, operations, preventions, all of it. And predictive analytics give us a way to see the patterns sooner, and that change can affect the entire direction of a patient's care or a health system's day for that matter. A couple of ways I could share that I've seen this work, both the clinical and operational settings, is first by identifying patients at higher risk. In my experience, clinicians want to spend their time with the people who need the most attention. But the challenge can be that risk is not always that obvious. A patient may look stable on paper, while signals in their history could point towards a decline. So my teams have built predictive models that bring those signals forward. For example, in population health, we just saw this at Trillium Health Resources in North Carolina. We could see changes in recent visits, medication patterns, social factors even, or gaps in follow-up that can be combined to show which patients need that outreach sooner. And like we've alluded to, this supports preventative care, which has always been a personal priority for me. We all hope that helping people stay well instead of waiting for them to get sick is kind of the future of care. And predictive analytics plays a major role in making that possible. But second, forecasting admission surges in the clinical capacity. Hospitals and clinics often feel the pressure of sudden swings in volume that we as patients are not at all aware of. What I've seen is that without the right visibility, these shifts force staff into constant reaction mode. So predictive models can examine historical patterns, seasonal trends even this time of year, and that current data to forecast days where admissions or clinical demand is likely to rise. And that kind of is a good segue into the organizational side. Supply shortages, I think, Pam, you've got some insight to that. Long waits for imaging, delays in prior auths. These issues grow when leaders don't have that visibility to how demand may be building. And those predictive analytics can show where bottlenecks are forming before they slow down the patient care. So in my experience, this has been especially helpful in areas like scheduling, referrals, and the whole rev cycle. So if anyone else wants to add to that, stepping back, predictive analytics just gives clinicians a chance to intervene earlier.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating where we are today versus when Core started like 11 years ago. Today, it's a focus on what you said around the clinical decision support or the advanced warning systems, if you will. If you're not using these tools as a second opinion, now there's litigation. You're right. The world has changed, right? Like if you're not leveraging AI tools for clinical decision, at least for a second opinion, there are legal ramifications to that now in certain areas, which is fascinating. I mean, when we started, it was completely the reverse. If you used anything like that, you were getting shut down. And we saw the same thing with prior authorization too, right? Now, granted, it was not necessarily used appropriately early on, but today, if you're not using these tools to at least screen, not just from an efficiency standpoint, but from reading the clinical reading the electronic health record, identifying the things that are missing, not just for patient care, but you can identify things that are missing from the note to help streamline the revenue cycle. So there's so many benefits to what you're talking about. I think it is a different world. It really is. It's wonderful. It's in a better way, I should say.
Most definitely. Um, the next question I want to ask is to the whole panel. How does AI improve the information to provide quality patient care? Pam, do you mind going first on that?
Oh, definitely. So, one of the things that is most dear to me is the fact that we have being an
Oh,
Oh, you're muted. You muted yourself by mistake?
being in IT, I started seeing small data, and now we've got large data, huge data, data that's disparate, data that's duplicated. So as we all grow, everybody's trying to march to the same beat, but the focus on getting the right information, collating it, and using the tools to analyze it is critical. And for providers, I think that's them being able to get all of the data. For example, at Mayo Clinic, since I think the start of COVID, they developed this program that is now 85% valid, and that they've implemented it at their clinics. And it's a solution for early detection of heart attack. So it's based off of everyone's EKG records. So those are so critical to a provider, to a specialist, to the patient, because 90% of the time, the patient really doesn't know what they should be telling a provider. So it's hard for a provider that needs to see 50 patients, 30 patients a day to be able to really assess the person, right? So leveraging tools like AI for medical images is phenomenal. It should be used by providers. It's a tool. It's not a decision-breaking tool. It's an assisting tool for them. Lab data, same thing. It used to be when you get lab work done, it would take a week to get the results back. Now, a standard full CB comprehensive analysis requires less than 8 hours. And sometimes you get it within the same day. So having more of those tools and having companies like Gary's company work on more open AIs to collect data in healthcare, I think is something that will be continually be needed.
I'm going to turn it over to you, Casey, in just a moment. But Pam, based on what you said, something came up to me. How you're saying clinicians having access to the data and how the Mayo Clinic example, you're able to track the EKGs to possibly predict heart attack or, other cardio issues that could come up. It made me think or wanted to even ask each of you, like, the reverse of the patient learning how to use AI to track certain things, right? Like, I think doctors are so relieved when a patient comes in and they're able to give them something, or at least let them know they've been tracking a diary, something of that they can work off of, versus they're playing, not playing, but um, they're looking to figure out, starting from scratch is what I'm trying to say, versus they have something to work with. So I'm glad that you said what you said, Pam, but that's just what came up in my mind. But Casey, do you have something that you would like to add? And then we'll turn it over to Gary.
For sure. The only thing that was coming to mind is that kind of back to the predictability tools, it can also help the clinicians by summarizing those changes in the condition. Like you said, highlighting trends that matter or predicting heart attacks based on labs. It can also suggest when extra monitoring might be helpful. And I know this is one of the hot topics, so hear me in that these tools do not replace clinical judgment, but they can help clinicians use their judgment with clearer information. I agree.
Most definitely.
Yeah,
And then
and
Gary.
building on that and what Pam said, actually what all three of you have said, and that is in the reverse, right, taking something, a complex clinical diagnosis, if you will, and leveraging conversational AI to put it into verbiage that a patient can understand, right?
Hmm.
Based
Yes.
upon their reading level or their demo. I mean, there's so many ways that we leverage this today. One particular that comes to mind is we do a lot of work in the life science space in pharmaceutical companies, right? They have medical affairs where a physician is calling in to find out what are the side effects of a drug or the dosage questions. And that information is mandated, right? They cannot go off label. They have to stay on label in their response. When a physician dials into that phone or chatbot or whatever, virtual assistant, they're getting it right off the label. They understand it. It's written for them. When I call or a patient calls in, I want it at like a sixth grade reading level, right? It has to be super clear. I'm a parent. I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. There is no effort for AI to do that. We do it on a regular basis. It's just applicable across multiple,
Most definitely.
scenarios like that, if you will.
Yes, yes, most definitely. So I'm loving the conversation thus far. And I'm talking to you all who are tuning in. If you've got a question, go ahead and drop it in the chat or comments. We're going to save some time at the end for a live Q&A, and we love to bring your questions into the conversation. No question is too big or too small. If you're thinking it, someone else probably is too. So please go ahead, get those questions in, and we'll get to as many as we can during the Q&A in just a bit. All right, my next question is to you, Casey. What role does AI play in building personalized outcomes?
Oh, yes. So, what I've seen both in the clinical and administrative settings is that most problems show their earliest signs long before anyone has time to look for them. But if we don't have the tools that will give us a way to spot those signals early so people can act before a backlog forms, or worse, before a patient falls through the cracks, it can be real problems. And just my experience and background, I usually break these into clinical and operational decisions. Obviously, on the clinical side, from my time working directly with care teams, I've watched how often clinicians are asked to manage care with limited visibility. So when you've got dozens of patients and overwhelming documentation, it's very easy for risk signals to go unseen. It just is. And those models with AI can bring those signals forward in a simple way and a very usable way. They can also flag rising risk patients based on patterns in their records that I mentioned earlier, or even the vitals or social factors. But for someone like me who started in behavioral health, it really matters. I always wanted to catch a concern before a patient reached that point of crisis. And these tools really help with that. They give the clinicians a clearer view so they can spend their time where it matters and not just sort through the noise. And then on the operational side, same thing applies really. Something I've noticed across many organizations lately is that operational fires rarely start as fires. They begin as small, quiet shifts in volume, or maybe a slight rise in prior auths, or like Gary was saying, the bottlenecks that begin to trend. And these analytics can help leadership see those shifts early. And even some of the operations I've worked with recently, you can look at forecast administration surges. We can understand staffing needs like days in advance so that we can anticipate where the throughput is likely to slow down instead of reacting once things are already strained or the organization is, really scrambling. So what I've learned through all of this is that these tools do not replace clinical judgment or operational leadership. Everyone is afraid of that. It's a very hot topic. I know it's a very hot angle just in AI in general, but they do something simpler. They reduce the guesswork. right? So if we have a steady environment, people can get a clearer picture of the information they're making decisions on. And me being the geek, I'm very data driven, and upwards they can make the decisions that are based on solid data.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right.
You
Next
know I'm
question
going
is
to jump in on this
yeah, I know. I was
because
waiting for you, Gary. I'm like, come
I
on,
was
Gary,
I
jump
want
in.
to I like to be polite. I believe that what you're speaking about is the nirvana for AI. So the ability to leverage this across population health, I mean, just the opportunity is tremendous into exactly to what you just spoke about. But now bring it down to what we've really been struggling to get to, which is personalized health, or getting down to the digital twin and the ability
Mhm.
to get pharmacogenetics and all the omics and really apply them to a patient, not to a population, but to a
Right.
patient. And to do the scenario, the planning and to see the effects of a drug against an individual, right? Things we've been talking about for a long time in our space that we really have not been able to accomplish. I really believe that these tools will enable us to get to a digital twin that effectively can make a huge difference in the outcomes for patients. And that I do think will happen in my lifetime.
Well,
I
speaking of
think it's
digital
already
twins,
happening. Yeah, I think
yeah, because
I think
well,
it's
go ahead,
already
Pam.
happening,
Hmm.
right? And going back to the patient and provider interaction, right? And I'm going to add in the fact that baby boomers are fairly tech savvy, right? And they're now considered in the senior categories. So would that combination giving patients more tools to get to know their health, right, makes it easier for the provider to really focus in on what can happen based on this particular patient. On top of that, with the amount of data that's already in the system, if a most baby boomers statistically are now going to be away from urban dwelling, they're going to move to rural because of a lot of factors, economic factors, socio factors. And with that, we have the tool to incorporate that with their personal health. So then, like Gary said, the geonomics, the lifestyle, right? That's so critical today because, you know, we're living in a rural area where you don't have water and you have to get filterized water versus the urban life, you're going to have two different outcomes, right? So I think that alone improves the conversation between the patient and the provider. So that's bridging that gap. Sorry,
And
quite passionate about that.
no,
So
it's okay. No, no need to apologize. In fact, based on what you just said, Pam, and then you, Gary, as far as like the AI twins, um, and tying it into personalization for the patient, I feel that there's a huge opportunity. Of course, I feel like there needs to be a fine line on how it's delivered. But imagine, how many times clinicians and other healthcare providers are demanded for attention or for emergency or for a one-off something happened and a patient wants to be squeezed in for an appointment. But you have an AI twin that they can talk to if done, you know, if done properly, right, and done with ease and that fine line, because I know some people don't want to say or might feel I don't want to talk to a robot or some kind of video version of the expert. But at the same time, you can at least get something and some initial answers because the physical human clinician can't be there to address your concerns. And I feel like that's a major opportunity for the twin or to continue the conversation, like you said, Pam, in those type of situations. But I feel like there's a major opportunity and it may happen or it is happening in our lifetime as Gary stated, but I feel like there's an opportunity for that alone to happen outside of just the data.
Well, I would flip it around even. I mean, flip it around to the patient, right?
Right.
Imagine if we could eliminate, and this is becoming reality, clinical trials because we can leverage these tools versus patients, right?
Hmm.
I mean, these are the things that will scale
Right.
and make us and bring drugs to market faster or,
Hmm.
much faster.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. And again, I just, especially with the twin situation, I just feel like it just needs to be handled delicately, right? But I think there
You're
is that
saying you
opportunity.
can only imagine one of me is what I think you're saying. And,
Yeah,
and I
quite
don't blame
possibly.
I don't blame you one bit. I have 6 children, so I know how you feel.
Um, yes, thank you. So Casey, I would love to hear from you, and then Pam, please let me know if you have anything to add to this. But since you are the geek, like you said, which I love that, the data and all that, you know, and I think this is a major situation or concern in any industry when it comes to AI and data quality, right? But why is data quality essential for successful AI transformation in healthcare?
Hmm. That's a good one. That's a good
Yep.
one. So I've been blessed to work with organizations of many sizes. And one thing that has stayed constant across all of them is that AI is only as good as the data you put into it. We always say garbage in, automated garbage out.
Right.
So you can have a strong model, you can have a strong team, you can have a strong vision, but if the inputs are inconsistent or unclear, everything downstream becomes unstable. My time at Eli Lilly really drove this home. Lilly operates under some of the most stringent expectations you will ever find. Of course, FDA regulations, HIPAA, internal audits, and global privacy requirements. But because of that, every data element when I was there had to be understood at a level that many organizations will actually never even reach. So we had well-defined rules around who owns each field, who could access it, why they needed it, how long it could be retained. And every one of those decisions had to be documented and reviewed regularly. We also had a very structured approach to mapping. So, for example, one of the data products, we couldn't even begin building the higher level features until we validated that each incoming data feed matched its contract. And if a field suddenly drifted from its expected value, the system would catch it, flag it, and prevent it from influencing downstream or worse, cross-functionally until it was corrected. So that discipline can really keep the analytics steady. And it really prevented a lot of noise that could have easily derailed multiple projects. And I carry that mindset with me everywhere I go as self-proclaimed data geek because I've watched what happens when teams skip that foundation. Once data definitions drift between clinics, or if two teams believe, I've seen this many times, two teams believe that a field means two different things, the entire automation layer with AI or whatever else you're using becomes unpredictable.
Mhm.
And if those results look convincing, but they don't hold up when you try to repeat them across multiple locations or scale otherwise, it's not good. And believe me, trust erodes quickly, and the clinicians will stop relying on the tools if if the trust isn't there. And that's really the last thing anyone wants.
Yes. Pam, do you have anything to add there?
Um, it's more of a question to both Gary, yourself, and Casey.
Okay.
So so we've and hopefully enticing a conversation. So we, everyone in the healthcare industry and other industries too, we have made every effort to scale the data that we have. And unfortunately, today, they're not consistent, right? Um, and the meanings are not the same. So, from your vantage point, how do you see us? Right now, we're like this, right? Planes on the runway, same taking off. How do you see us being able to converge
Mm.
as far as the data goes?
Well, we're not talking about perfection. We're talking about discipline, clear
Right.
contracts, clear ownership, routine validation, and really the willingness to correct something early before it becomes a pattern. So, if a healthcare organization, or to your point, any other type of organization wants AI that holds up at scale across multiple care settings and use cases, the path should always start in the same way, a strong, steady data that everyone understands and respects, because everything else is going to be built on top of that.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I like what you're
There's
saying.
little
Go
to
ahead.
add to your comments because you hit it on the head. I mean,
Yeah.
but of course I will add on to it, pile onto it, if you will. These agentic agents rely on clean
Yes.
information, right? 100% for high quality to retain the clinician's confidence level. We didn't add so much about being safe and secure, but I know we all get that. But as an industry, I don't think we do ourselves many favors, Pam, in our industry, right? I mean, while we're getting towards standards around meaningful use in our EMRs, our lives are not made any easier by any of our partners, if you will. Um, by definition, by the way they're stored, there's just so many things wrong that we could fix. The good news is, and we've seen this at our customers, is that the ability to leverage or build your own large language model and then leverage multiple, have layers in the middle that make this information ubiquitous. So it is the same to the AI agent. So when it looks at this customer, it knows what it is versus when it looks at this customer or this patient versus that patient. I think these tools, these large language models, and add a lot of value there. I'd be curious, are you seeing that in the clinical decision support as well? It
Yes.
really,
100%.
yeah, yeah, we see
Slow,
it on the operational
yes.
level for sure.
It's very slow, but it's there. If clinicians are not necessarily against AI, there's more adoption and there's more standardization coming out because it
Yeah.
really needs to start at that level down in
Yes.
order for it to propagate. So,
Well, it has to start at the education level, and I feel like that's a big piece of what we miss in healthcare, right? We really need our docs to understand what what these tools are and how they can be leveraged. You know, it's just it just requires across the spectrum of age, if you will, right? Our most senior physicians that have the most wisdom and the most value are really not in tune yet with these tools and what their capabilities are. Not their fault. I don't mean to say that in a derogatory way, but whereas anybody in medical school now, this is all they're going to know, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't wait. We can't wait for them to get to where we need to be. So, I agree with you. I think it's just, but it's a big piece of that is education.
And I just think overall, especially what each of you said, but Casey, when you said the idea of having discipline with data and having clean data, I think with AI, in which I think a lot of organizations or those or the personnel who work for organizations, whether it's healthcare or not, there's so much data that is dirty that people put off or say we'll do it next year or we'll do it next quarter, and it's just been building up and building up and building up, and now we have AI coming in and people are thinking, oh, it can just fix it, but no, the data needs to be cleaned. So that whole process of cleaning the data is where people are going to get possibly in trouble because they let it, pile up, or there's just other things that I think a lot of humans are going to be fearful of. But once they see the data is cleaned and the possibility, like you said, Gary, as far as education to see what is possible, once the clean data is fed or scaled, is ginormous. But I feel there's a lot of organizations or people within organizations who are going to be very resistant because they have to go through that grueling process of cleaning data that they've been putting off for such a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, don't start there
Yeah.
is our recommendation. Do not start
Mhm.
there because you will be in the pilot phase of leveraging these tools for the rest of your career. Start
Mhm.
where you can be successful, get some wins, get some clinicians that can support you, and are confident in the output and leverage in, not that you asked my opinion, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. Leverage the AI tool to identify bad data, right?
Mhm.
It's wonderful at that. I'm not saying have it fix the data, identify the problems, notify somebody who's capable of keep the human in the loop.
Mhm.
And we do that on everything, right? Does this look right to you? Yes,
Right.
no. If no, what's right? So I can learn from you as an agent, as an AI agent.
Most definitely. All right. So based on time, because as you all can see, we are loving this topic and we're having a great conversation. I'm going to skip a few questions because we've kind of tied into some of the answers here. But the next question is to you, Pam. How does AI support compliance, governance, and HIPAA aligned operations?
Oh my, you had to go there. And I volunteered to answer this question. Um, so it's important to have compliance and governance, and it's definitely a key for HIPAA. What needs to happen and is happening slowly is that we continue to ensure, again, building the brain, continue to ensure that PHI is protected and that they've got controlled boundaries, and that in AI, we need to build it or train it so that it can ensure those. Not only does that provide the security that we need, but it also builds the trust. And trust is very important. I mean, us humans don't trust machines, they don't trust a lot of things, although now you can sleep in a car and it'll take you from A to B. Not something I want to do, but it's there. So we need those. We need those for our guardrails. And also, we need those to expand us from not only US base, but worldwide base, because healthcare affects everyone in similar and same way. So those guardrails are still going to be important.
Most definitely. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to add to this question before moving on?
I do.
Okay.
I think it's a given that any platform you're going to leverage has to be secure, HIPAA compliant. When I talk about system, I'm talking about enterprise systems to manage, build, train, test, deploy agents, AI agents, whether they're agentic, whether they're conversational, whatever they are, you need a HIPAA compliant tool that's going to do everything Pam just referred to. When you go to deploy, I think back to the pharma example, where there's so much GXP, even to your point around the data, there's so much concern about what could become potentially harmful to a patient. Don't necessarily start there. Those kinds of automation can be deterministic. They can leverage certain capabilities of AI tools, and you can kind of turn them on over time and increase the reliance upon uh, not just conversational AI, but generative AI, right? Don't go turn it all on all at once. Don't even anticipate that you're going to turn it all on in perhaps over the next couple of years. However, when you're having a conversation with a patient to schedule an appointment, Okay, you can certainly leverage these generative capabilities to have a polite conversation like you would have with the same live agent on a phone. You can so there's a spectrum, right? There's a spectrum, and you have to always be secure. And I don't mean to say, but there's a way you can leverage these tools and tune them up and down based upon the use case that you have. And that's typically what we see in our implementations.
All right. Thank you, Gary. So we are approaching our last question. So those of you that are here live, please go ahead and drop them in the chat or comments. We do have a few that have come in already, so we thank those that have. Our last question, I'm going to pose it to the whole panel, but Casey, I would love for you to go first on this,
Okay.
is what does the future of AI-driven healthcare look like?
I'd love to take this one. When I look at the future of AI-driven healthcare, I always come back to what I've seen across my work with supporting the clinical teams and operations. I'm actually really happy with the direction that we're heading in because it's clearer now than it's ever been. And much of that clarity, I think, comes from what frontline teams are experiencing every day. Even earlier this month, I remember reading an article on Becker's, I believe it was, where health system executives were discussing their financial recovery. But one point that stood out to me was that the organizations making the strongest progress were pairing with financial discipline, the tools that ease the workload on clinicians. Yay. So they're finding budget for it. That's at the top of the food chain. And that lines up with what I see across all care environments is that AI is becoming less about big ideas. And what I used to see years ago in automation is who can say they have the shiny new toy that automation is. And now it's more about saving time, reducing manual loops, and giving the teams back the room they so desperately need to breathe. And I think even a couple months ago, I watched a podcast or something that covered a health system that was moving into its next phase of digital growth. And what struck me there in thinking about the history is that their move was from all those scattered efforts and disparate information to something much steadier. So we're seeing cleaner data paths and more consistent workflows. And I really related to that because the work I did recently at Trillium in North Carolina, we invested the time to be sure that the data entered the system cleanly and consistently. And again, like we said, when your inputs are structured and dependable, everything that follows is really great. And I was at HIMSS earlier this year, the conference in Vegas, and I sat in on a session where several leaders spoke about the burden that repetitive administrative tasks places on clinicians. And the theme actually across every panel that week was the same. The real value of AI isn't in doing something dramatic. It's in giving the clinicians their time back. So remove that friction, have fewer moments of firefighting, and of course, everything is going to work together in more predictable ways. And AI is not the star of the show. I think the real story is a future where clinicians have the time to be clinicians and patients move through care with fewer hurdles and leaders can make decisions based on that steady, dependable information. That's the environment that I want to help build and where I see AI-driven healthcare going.
I love that. I love that answer, Casey. Thank you so much for sharing.
My
Pam, I'm
pleasure.
going to ask you the same question. What does the future of AI-driven healthcare look like to you? You're muted, by the way. Oh, there you
I was thinking. I I I agree with everything Casey said. I think one thing to leave as we end this panel discussion is that AI is there to help and improve roles and responsibilities. the mundane stuff that and to kind of answer some of the questions on the chat, the mundane stuff that actually costs money, right? Scheduling that takes an hour and a half to get through a phone, wait time for a patient, the doctors closing their notes correctly and not having to go back in and out 2 or 3 times. Those cost money. Those impact patient care. So if you look at the workflow, AI will help streamline the workflow, which at the end causes us to have better revenue. With better revenue, you can always redirect some of that to what Gary said earlier, which is, and Casey, which is putting money in the budget to work on these tools that will allow us to get better, that will allow us to bring more patient-provider interaction. Provider doesn't have to read the notes from the lab report in front of the patient. They should be able to say, hey, these are what was seen. I'm sure you got a copy of it, depending on how well they know the patient. And then they can have a better discussion about the patient's outcome. So that's kind of what I'm leaving with this panel discussion.
All right. Thank you so much, Pam. And then to you, Gary, what does the future of AI-driven healthcare look like to you?
I'll keep it short and sweet, Monique. I think it's really healthcare driving AI. I see these highly regulated markets like healthcare and financial services really driving AI, and I think in healthcare specifically, it's going to pair the human wisdom that I talked about earlier with this AI-driven knowledge. I think that's going to make a difference for patient care. I think it's going to make a difference for patient safety, getting things done faster with far less. This is clearly an opportunity for us to reduce the cost and improve the patient care. It's right. I think we would all agree it's patients first, and these tools will make they are already making a tremendous difference. I think we continue down this path. We work with our back-end systems to leverage these capabilities more and more. And we do some of the cutting edge things that we're talking about. We're gonna get there, but I think we're driving the industry. I don't see this as a technology play. I see this as a healthcare play. And this is it. This is our moment to really make a difference. At least this is the third time I'm saying this. There's nothing wrong with me in my lifetime. So
I love it. I love it. Real quick, Pam, do you have a hard stop? I just want to allocate maybe one or two questions from the audience, but I just want to make sure we're respectful of your time, Pam.
Good.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, now we're going to take some time to answer your questions live. We've had such a great conversation so far, and we know there's a lot to unpack. So let's hear what's on your mind. If you haven't already, go ahead and drop your questions into the chat. We're going to pull just a little bit because we are going to go over just a little bit over time and have our panel weigh in. All right. So the first question that I would love to ask you all is, this is from Jiri, last name, or Pusha, sorry, Push. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but how is agentic AI helping revenue cycle management or billing process in healthcare?
I'm jumping in because it's one of the
Okay,
biggest
Gary?
opportunities. It's one of the biggest use cases that we have, and it's just a tremendous opportunity for us to do some of the things we talked about early on, where we are detecting even at the appointment scheduling. You have a patient, they call in, we know who their payer is, who their health insurance payer is. We know, based leveraging AI tools and agents, we know that where their denials are happening typically. We know why. We know that they're going to ask a specific question. So we're going to get that right up front to improve the revenue cycle. Then we're going to use it for the coding We're going to use it all the way through the denials. We have now outbound calling that calls the payers to get claim adjudication, has a conversation with a live agent, a virtual assistant waiting on hold for 40 minutes without a person having to wait on hold for 40 minutes, where the agentic agent speaks to a live agent, collects the information, puts it back in the EMR. I just went through the entire rev cycle process super quick for time, but this is, to me, this is one of the largest opportunities from an ROI perspective. This is not necessarily, let's just leave it at that. It's definitely an operational play, but it's a big one. And it will definitely fund a lot of the things that we're talking about doing in our customers and our organizations.
All right. Thank you. Pam, is there something you wanted to add? I wasn't sure.
No, he
Okay.
said it all. So
All
it's
right.
all good.
Okay. This next question is actually a question I wanted to ask as a follow-up to each of you earlier in the discussion. But what are the key components of a comprehensive AI readiness framework for healthcare organizations?
Yeah,
Casey, I'm
so
gonna actually, I wanted to point this to you because I was like, you would be the great person to answer this. Go ahead.
thank you. I would say a strong AI readiness framework really starts again with that clean, well-governed data and clear rules about where it comes from and how it'll be used. But the next piece is operational stability, the standard workflows, consistent documentation habits, and leadership agreement on which problems should be solved first. We can make our recommendations, but they need to understand them and weigh in. But then the final element, I think, is the people readiness piece, which does mean the training we spoke of earlier, change management support, and a plan to measure kind of whether the work is actually reducing strain on staff and improving care and the big word outcomes. So that framework is where everyone should kind of start the workflow.
All right. Anyone else have anything to add? All right.
Agree.
Good.
Yep. Okay. This will be our last question. But how are healthcare teams using AI to quickly interpret massive data sets and reveal critical patterns that were once hard to spot? Go ahead, Pam.
Oh, go ahead.
And then
So
Casey.
I'm going to refer back to what Casey said earlier. The criticalness of reporting, it's become so vital now because that's where you see the gaps, as Gary had mentioned earlier. That brings out in evidence, because most providers don't believe anything, even on paper. But that brings out the fact that there is an issue and it can be solved, right? The key to solving that issue is the people. The people, key to understanding it is them understanding how it can help, how the tool or AI or anything technological can help them, which in turn helps the patient. And then, we're in the world of business. I hate to say this, but being in healthcare is also a business, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody needs to understand that it's not a indefinite pool of money. So at some point, that ROI that somebody brought a question in the chat comes into play. Mm-hmm. So that whole stream is very critical.
Yeah, and those health systems, we are starting to see a movement of the scattered information into a central data layer. So teams no longer have to dig through multiple systems to find what they need. At least that's the most ideal thing that I'm requested of, is that one-stop shop. And then once that organization is made for the data, the AI tools can then pull answers in seconds through simple queries and surface the key details directly inside daily workflows. So to answer the question, that shift can let clinical and operational teams spend less time searching and organizing the information and more time acting on it. And to your point, Pam, they believe it if they see it.
All right. Gary, anything to add here, my friend?
Well, the clinical side of it is fascinating. I think, I worked at a healthcare provider that, and going back to the data being clean, right? When a referral came in, they redo everything, all the testing end to end, and they didn't do it just because it was a fee for service organization. They really did it because they didn't want to rely on data from somebody from another organization, right? They needed to collect it, run it through their clinical decision support systems, et cetera. I think if we can leverage AI to get that layer up here at the highest level, where we're going to have EMR, we're getting close to be able to share data across electronic health records. We're getting close. We're not quite there yet. But a patient that's moving from one institution to another, there's no reason to not leverage these tools to review that clinical information and give an accuracy level, right? And say, yeah, I agree with this. You should be comfortable. Don't redo these tests. Move on, right? Save the time, save the money, there's so much savings to be had. So that's on top of everything that was just said, I think that would be helpful.
All right. Well, I will say this. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of today's session. I feel like we could go on about this. I think this was a great conversation that we had. And for everyone who's joined us, thank you so much for joining us for the AI-driven healthcare, transforming patient care and operational excellence. We've talked through how AI, automation, real-time analytics, clean data are really shifting what's possible in healthcare, helping teams diagnose faster, personalize care, streamline operations, and stay ahead of compliance, all while improving outcomes across the board. It's clear we're in the middle of a major transformation. As Gary has mentioned, there's a major opportunity here, one that's empowering healthcare leaders to create more connected, efficient, and patient-centered systems. On behalf of Pronix Inc., thank you again for being a part of this conversation. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Gary, for being here. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. And at Pronix, we are proud to support organizations like yours as you bring AI-powered innovation into the heart of healthcare. So we encourage you all to stay connected with us. We've got more to share as we continue helping providers build smarter, more resilient, and truly digital healthcare ecosystem. This event's recording will be available on the same LinkedIn Live event page for those who missed it, or you can visit our YouTube channel for Pronix or wish to revisit any of these discussions. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again, Gary, Pam, and Casey.
Thank you.